SimWorld presents Around the Table with E and the Fat Man.
What's up, everybody? It's me, it's the B.O.B., and I'm here with my man E. Eric, how are you doing today?
Bob, I am doing well. Hopefully you are too, having a good weekend.
Absolutely. I'm a little tired. I did some traveling. Me and my wife went up to Pennsylvania went to a comedy show, and then we went to see my mom.
So, not one and the same, I take it.
No. Shameless plug. If you haven't seen him, go see Tom Segura or go listen to him or something, unless you're sensitive.
Tom Segura. All right. No, that explains making the effort. Very good. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed that, Big Bob.
Well, everybody, this is Around the Table with E and the Fat Man. I am the Fat Man. He is obviously E. We talk a little bit about what's hot in SimWorld, what's hot in the real world, and pretty much anything that we feel like talking about. E, what are we doing here today?
Well, I think if we're talking real world, we got to talk college football. This weekend, of course, has kicked it off. Nice to have it back after too long. Get a little gridiron action back. Opening up. Fun to have the game in Ireland in the Big Ten kicking things off. But, Bob, with you, actually, I wanted to ask you a question. I know you're a big college football fan. Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State. Is there anybody out there that has a realistic shot of knocking these guys off for one of those college football playoff spots?
So I think there's a lot of teams that can knock Clemson out because I don't think Clemson is going to be... I'm not going to say they're not going to be good, but they're not going to be Clemson good, and they're not going to have a good enough record to make it into the playoff. I think that there's a lot of overrated teams, and it's just because of who they are. Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. We don't know what's going to happen with Oklahoma after Lincoln Riley left for USC. Are they going to fall apart? Obviously, they ended the season well with... the interim coach, I can't think of his name. What was his name? He was there forever.
Not a Solich. That's Nebraska. Not Venables. He's coming in, but
that's the thing. Like you mentioned, Venables. That's another reason that I think Clemson is not going to. He left Clemson. I don't think Clemson's going to be. I don't think they're going to be in the top 10 by the end of the season.
Interesting. That's a fairly bold take. And, look, they did lose both their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, as you were just alluding to there. That said, me personally, I think Clemson, maybe only behind Alabama, has the best defense in the nation this year. Team is going to be really, really hard to score on that side of the ball. If the offense is coming back around a little bit, I do expect them to be very good. That said, I think you make a point in terms of, the immediate teams that you think of competing with that top four there, and Notre Dame, Texas A&M. I'm with you. I think actually that sort of next group is a little bit overrated. That said, somebody coming out, being a dark horse, making a run, and quite frankly, I think if anybody, that team could be USC. I think USC could run the pack in their one of their final seasons here, that's a pretty good path to get yourself a CFP spot. So big ask for Lincoln Riley in his first year, but Caleb Williams at quarterback and friends, maybe they can get it done.
Yeah, and they brought in one of the best, if not the best receiver in college football from Pittsburgh, in Addison. They have two extremely talented players on offense. They have a lot of talented players, but transfer-wise, they brought in two very, very talented players, and they might finally get started back on the path of where they were in the early 2000s. But it's USC, like Penn State, is one of those teams that every single year it's always, this is the year that they get back on track. This is the year that they get back on track. This is the year that they get back on track. And they never get back on track because there's always, they lose to a couple teams they shouldn't. They beat a couple teams that they probably shouldn't. And you never know. They shoot themselves in the foot. It doesn't help that, when you look at the Pac-12, the Big Ten, the SEC, they're obviously the cream of the crop conferences in college football. SEC and Big Ten, obviously, I'd say well above the Pac-12. But the Big Ten always shoots themselves in the foot every single year, and it's the way that their scheduling is. But it's always who's going to beat Ohio State, who can beat Ohio State, and just to jump back to asking when you asked earlier about if there's anybody that can knock any of them off. I mean, I'm sure Ohio State's going to have a slip up, but I think Alabama and Ohio State are 100% locks for the college football playoff.
I will dispute that with one thing, and I do think that Ohio, and I do think that all four of these teams will end up there. The four I mentioned at the start: Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State. That said, I actually think Alabama and maybe Georgia are closest to locks on this, because I think they can lose to each other and still get their still see their way into the Final Four. Ohio State. I think when Ohio State and Michigan meet, and remember that game's in Columbus, not Ann Arbor this year, I expect both of those teams to be undefeated. Now, Ohio State will be a favorite, certainly playing in Ohio. They're going to be a favorite in that game, and they're probably the better team. That said, is Michigan going to be good this year? Yeah, Michigan will be good. Can they win that game in an emotionally charged rivalry matchup like that? Yeah, sure, anything can happen. So there is a path, I think, for Michigan to get there. Similarly, maybe out of the ACC, North Carolina, or just maybe a resurgent, Miami could make a run at something to get that ACC spot and maybe sneak in there. And then again, I mentioned them earlier. I do think USC has the potential, and I like them better than Utah. Not that Utah's a bad team, but I do actually like USC better than Utah for the Pac-12 this year. Again, another kind of way to sneak in there. I've kind of talked about some of my, I don't want to call them underdogs, but maybe they're a little bit underrated. Maybe they're not, top 10 or just sort of outside there right now. USC is a good description of that. Miami as well. Bob, do you have any dark horse favorites for this season? Anybody not quite top 10, top 5 fancied that you think can be there when it's all said and done?
I don't really know if I do have one. There are some teams that have some very interesting players that I think when they make the jump to the NFL, they're going to be good. But I don't know if there's a lot of these teams I just don't know if they have enough talent to make any kind of waves. There's going to be a team that we're not thinking about that we're going to I never thought we'd see them there. I mean, it was Central Florida a couple years ago where they went on their tear. Cincinnati has been doing extremely well recently, but they did lose not Spencer Rattler. He transferred to South Carolina from Oklahoma. Desmond Rattler. They lost him, and I think he was a lot of the heart and soul of that Cincinnati team. And I'm not sure they're only at 23.
They're barely inside the top 25, which feels pretty legit to me.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if they had a down year. I don't think there is. I always want to say Penn State's going to do it this year. They're going to finally put something together where maybe we can finish in the top 10 or 5. But it's every time we get up there, that's the one thing. Every time we get ranked into the top 5, we're going to lose the next game. Period. It never fails. It doesn't matter who we play. We could play St. Mary's School for the Blind and Deaf, and we're going to lose the next game if we're ranked high.
Yeah, the challenge for Penn State, not to get too under the hood with how the Big Ten works, but being in that Big Ten Eastern side of things.
Oh yeah,
you're getting Ohio State, you're getting Michigan, you're getting Michigan State every year, and that's a lot to take on. But that's where you're going with the big schools and the super conferences.
Yeah.
But you know what? Maybe let's take it to the other end of the spectrum here for a little bit. Jackson State. Not just real world, but also SimWorld, not just football, but also basketball, bringing in marquee recruits. Deion Sanders, of course, in charge now. Moving to Division 1A, what do you think about the prospects for a Jackson State trying to move up and compete with the big boys?
Yeah, I think that it's a possibility in the future that they'll look at that. I don't think they're going to be able to compete. This is where I wish I had a soundboard. I'd press the money sign a couple times so we could hear the coins.
Ka-ching, ka-ching, just let me know, and I'll provide some vocal.
It's one of those things where they could probably, right now, I don't think they could even compete with the lowest end of college football. And it's just because they really don't have a ton of talent there. They brought in the number one player in college football because of the money bags, and then they brought in one of the top players in SimWorld college basketball again because of the money bags. But who do they really have? And I just, down the road, if he stuck it out for 5-10 years, he could definitely build something there. But I don't even see him sticking there. I think a jump to Division I, or an attempt to jump to Division I, would just be to try and keep Deion Sanders there. I expect that the next time Florida State has a job opening, which will probably be this year because they just go through coaches like crazy.
I think they could be 500 this year, Florida State, which is actually optimistic.
I think the next time there's a position open there for head coach, that I wouldn't be surprised to see him jump. He says all the right things now, but I see him, just like most people, you say the right things where you're at now, but as soon as that better opportunity opens up, you're going there. And
well, you're talking about Deion jumping to a higher level. Certainly not an unrealistic scenario. D. Woodley, almost certainly a one and done. Can't see him sticking around for more than 1 year. What do you expect for his 1 year, though? I mean, look, he is an elite talent. He's going to be leaps and bounds beyond anybody else he comes up against in the SWAC, the Southwest Athletic Conference. But do you see them dancing at the end of the year, Bob?
When it comes to, I don't know, jump back to, when it comes to the smaller teams, the smaller conferences, I think there is an opportunity, but all of this talk about him being toxic or the way he is, just all that talk around his negativity, I don't know if when you're playing against or playing with lesser talent, I don't want to say that, but when you're playing with lesser talent, if you are, if you're negative, like you're gonna bring them down. Like, this isn't like a Kentucky where there's all these great, like they all think they're the best because they probably were. They're probably how many of them?
Right. you were for a long time. That's right. In your world,
in your world, you're the best player, and it doesn't matter what anybody else does. But when you're at a place like Jackson State, do you really feel like you are the best player in the world? D. Woodley is going to think he's the best player in the world, and he is going to be the best player on there. But how is he going to portray that to his teammates, and is it going to be detrimental to their growth? I'm going to say right now, no. I don't think they're going to dance.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to take the other side of this because, look, you're absolutely right. This is a team sport, 5 guys out there, and, if they're not all playing together, it doesn't matter how talented you are. That said, I mean, D is going to be something unlike most of these schools have ever seen before. He should score 40 or 50 a night is what it comes down to in this league. But to be fair, I will throw out that my one concern is, like, I mean, look, I don't expect to see them ranked. I don't expect to see them undefeated. I expect a regular season title, no problem.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, you're not getting 2 bids out of this conference. There's no way. No. So if you want to be dancing, you're going to have to win your conference tournament as well. And that's always, a little bit random. That's always a little bit luck of the draw. Anybody can beat anybody one game. And, not a whole lot of people are SWAC historians out there, but the few of you who may be are going to know that Texas Southern has really been the force in that conference for about the past decade, and they're not gonna take this lying down. They like being the boss of the conference. So we'll see. It's entertaining. What I'll kind of end this on, though, is whatever else folks want to say about D. Woodley. I am very happy that he made this decision coming to an HBCU. I think sort of taking a different route from the G League or the Power 5 schools as a way to kind of showcase myself. I just love it. I think, if anything, it's kind of overdue for some of these smaller schools, particularly the HBCUs, to really, kind of see their name in print, get a little bit of press, a little bit of love for what they're doing here. And so my hat's off to D for doing that. Good job, kid, for putting Jackson State on the map.
and I'd like to switch it a little bit up because I know you love your dynamic duos.
I do.
And we have a lot of them.
Peanut butter and chocolate, Martin and Lewis, all of them.
I went peanut butter and chocolate. I was like, was he going to say peanut butter and jelly? I know peanut butter and jelly. I got you there. Reese's Cups. Gotta love them. Are there any? Who are the ones that you're most looking forward to heading into the college basketball season in a couple months? Because we know we have a bunch of players who I was actually surprised to see get together because I felt like there was going to be a lot of big head. Like, how do big heads work together? And I know I mentioned Kentucky earlier.
Yeah, that's the biggest one.
Yeah,
that's right.
They haven't really been able to consistently put it together because there are too many big heads. But who are the dynamic duos that you're really interested in seeing or think are going to succeed?
Well, we're talking Kentucky. Let's stick there a minute because I don't think there's any bigger 1-2 punch coming in than Jamison Johnson and Glory Tate. I don't think anybody would dispute that. Those two working together, I actually can see them playing off of each other very well. One of JJ's strengths, which some people also take as a knock on him, is the fact that he's very unselfish. He doesn't come across as an alpha type. He doesn't get very excited out there typically. And accordingly, everything just looks kind of smooth, which almost makes it look like he's coasting. And he's not necessarily doing that. He's just so smooth out there. But I think you're going to see him working with Glory Tate, who can also, has the size to get inside, kind of play on the wing, more of a small forward shooting guard kind of, prospect, getting a lot of clean looks. You're going to see him much more open than you ever saw him at St. Louis last year, for sure. And I got to like them. But we're talking just my favorites. Mm-hmm. My favorite might actually be, let's take it back to our football number one, Alabama. Actually, they have a decent class coming in. Don't forget Rodrigo Fall. But I'm going to talk about DJ Childs, my man Rick Blaze's adopted son. But then also Quincy Henderson off that Southeast Select team. Just a freak athlete, jump out of the gym, was in the McDonald's dunk contest, came on strong for Southeast at the end of the year. I am a huge Quincy Q Henderson fan, and I am looking forward to seeing the two of them work together for the Crimson Tide. How about you?
Yeah, it's hard to go against what you already said. JJ and Glory Tate, I mean, they're great players. JJ, I just would like to see him more aggressive at the basket. That's my biggest thing. I feel like he has the physical dominance where I'm not going to call him the next Shaq because there's never going to be another Shaq ever. But he has the physical dominance that he should be able to push all these players that he's playing against around and just feast underneath. But he doesn't. And I get it. He is getting his other teammates involved. He almost had a couple triple-doubles last year. But I need him to be more physical. I think one that I'm interested in seeing, which is a little weird because I think I was hard on the one throughout the season, Jalen Snow and LaGerald Carroll at UCLA.
Yeah.
It's just that guard combo is going to be very interesting to see. One, if they can work together, because Snow, he played really well, as you know, in the McDonald's All-American game. That was a game for him. He kind of showed out a little bit.
That was his breakout and showcase, his one big star turn.
And that's the problem that I see with it is this was an All-American game where everybody's just kind of having fun. It's really not for anything other than to showcase your abilities. Outside of that, he was a disappointment to me all year because I believe at one point I had him ranked number one for a week. That was at the very beginning of the season. He may have been the first number one, if I can remember correctly.
I believe it was. It was him and Che King were fighting over that number one spot to begin the year. And why not? You look at them on paper, and those were your two clear-cut kids. You weren't looking at Jody. I'm sorry, Jody. Excuse me. Well, I sort of. You'll see where I came up with that. I was going all Johnson there. Cody Johnson and Jamison Johnson.
There
And
you
slammed into Jody.
Yeah, imagine them being together.
Their love child. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, world of talent, and as you saw in that McDonald's game, can certainly get it done. What kind of, I mean, I think UCLA has the top class coming in next year. Looking at LaGerald Carroll, looking at Jalen Snow. Yeah. Don't forget J.J. Ortega and Jarvis Woodson, two really talented kids also coming in, though. But I think what the Bruins might have a little bit of trouble with next year is, I don't know, do you play all three of those guards, Ortega, Snow, and Carroll, out there at the same time? And Carroll can play a little bit more of a wing kind of player, but, he's not... He's probably, using traditional basketball terminology, more of a 2 than a 3, more of a shooting guard than a small forward, just like Jalen Snow. And it's going to be interesting to see sort of how all those players work together and mesh, particularly Snow and Carroll, over the next couple of years for sure.
Yeah, and I think we're really moving into that where I think seeing the three guards is just going to start overtaking every single... Golden State just kind of ruined basketball for us with their small ball. They pretty much have a shooting guard at every position at this point.
Yeah, and if anything, the college game was actually even quicker to adopt and more widespread adopt 3 guard lineups. I mean, you can't find a whole lot of college teams that aren't running 3 guards out there at one time.
But I also just real quick I wanted to mention it's one that we talked about with the number one player, CKC. I want to throw him in the dynamic duo because his teammate followed him to Maryland in Keith Anthony. And Keith Anthony, I believe, was a very underrated player. I think that he has all of the tools defensively and on the boards to be a very good player for a long time. He obviously didn't have the scoring prowess as other people, but when you have CKC, do you really need to? CKC was putting up over half the points consistently on that team. Like, do you really need him down low to be the scoring?
Right. No, great point. I mean, it's true they are a duo, and actually it's nice that Anthony and CKC will be coming to Maryland with that background of having been together before. I'm not quite sure I'd call this a duo in my mind. It's more just CKC. But hey, that could be enough. I mean, you were talking about the best basketball talent to play for Maryland, certainly since at least Steve Francis, I would say.
Yeah.
The question is being a one-man show going to be enough? I mean, it's certainly going to be a great platform for Kingy Cross to show off his abilities and get people at the next level excited about him, no doubt about that. Is it going to be enough for a Big Ten title, a deep NCAA tournament run? I'm a little bit more skeptical on that. Just back to this is a team game conversation. It's going to be hard for him to elevate it quite that level. But look, hey, historically in the college game, we've seen guys able to do that. Taking it way back to the 1980s, Danny Manning in Kansas. Danny Manning took that team by himself, essentially. It's happened. But I have to say, I think CKC is going to be great statistically next year. I'm open to being surprised, and maybe I will be. I don't think he's going to move Maryland into that top rank of college basketball all on his own. I expect D. Woodley's impact at Jackson State to be much more than I think CKC will be able to pull off at Maryland. But look, super talented kid, maybe uniquely, maybe generationally talented. Go prove me wrong, young man. Do it.
I'll say maybe they get out of the first round of the Big Ten tournament.
Hey, even my Indiana Hoosiers managed to do that last year, Bob. So hey, let's kind of wrap up the SimWorld discussion with one final kid to talk about, and we've gone off the duos a little bit with CKC there to the one man shows, and another place that's going to absolutely be the case next season. CMJ, Chance Milton Jones, formerly of the New York Stars, taking his talents to Providence. Again, not necessarily a powerhouse school, not necessarily going to be loads of other 4 or 5 star talent there with him, but I don't know. Much like Jackson State, much like Maryland, can this be a case where you've got a star kid come in and maybe be a big difference maker in the Big East?
I am more biased towards a big being able to take over and really affect the team than I am for a guard. When it comes to the bigs, if they can absolutely dominate, you're going to have to double team them. You're going to have to throw some extra bodies at them just to try and slow them down. And it's going to open up for everybody else on the team. I think that Providence will be a lot better with CMJ. Obviously, I think Gotham 5 is going to take a little step back slightly on the talent side because of him leaving, but I still think with Coach Bellardi, they're going to figure it out regardless. But I do think CMJ is going to make us wonder and talk more about Providence. When it comes to relevance, I don't think they'll make a deep run, but I think they could get into the tournament, maybe win one in the first round. They could be a Cinderella team. There's always that team that you're just like, they're not going to do anything, and then it's like, oh, here they are in the Elite Eight. What are we? What are we doing now?
Right?
Are they going to be that team? It's a possibility. I think they're going to be better. I don't know if they're going to make a deep run into the tournament though.
Yeah, I think I agree with you almost 100% on that. In fact, I'm going to go the full 100. I'm going to go ahead and commit. but what I will say, which, like I said, certainly doesn't contradict anything, I'll throw this out there. I'm not sure that any other player made as much of a leap during the season as CMJ made last year.
Yeah.
I mean, both in terms, obviously, his ranking, his notoriety, all the rest of that, but just looking at his performance and his statistical growth, New York unexpectedly got bounced out of the SimWorld Nationals last year by Miami in definitely a shocking result, but wasn't CMJ's fault. He came 1 assist away from having our first triple-double in SimWorld history in that game. And to me, that kind of says it all. That's from his first game to his last game. That is how much growth you saw. I expect him to continue to get better, actually. I think there's still room to grow, still upside in his game. So I don't think he's going to be in Providence for too long. But I would warn the rest of the Big East for the year or two that he is there. Look out, because I do think he can make them relevant. And hey, like we're talking about with tournaments, it only takes getting hot, one little run, and suddenly you're there. So I'm no pressure, but I'm expecting big things.
No, I get you. Well, you know what, E? We've talked everybody's ear off a little bit here. Is there anything else you want to tell the SimWorld family?
No, just getting excited to get ready for basketball coming back. We got college football starting back up this weekend. Basketball, it's in the air. You can smell it coming soon with fall about here. Getting ready, getting excited to kick things back off again.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. Everybody, be good and have a good day.
Later, folks.